Hi everyone, welcome back to my lab and today's video in which I am going to be reviewing and demoing for you the brand new Jeffree Star Complexion products. I do have the Magic Star Concealer in the shade 613 and the setting powder in the shade Beige. Today is not my first day wearing the concealers. I have tried them on and off for the last few days. I've gathered my thoughts and I'm ready to share those with you. So let's go ahead and get started. I purchased my concealer and setting powder from Beautylish this time around. I purchased the Blue Blood palette from the Jeffree Star website and it had a little bit of an issue when I was placing the order, and then shipping kind of took quite long. So I decided to order from the Beautylish website. Plus their customer service is great. Not that Jeffree Star's isn't, but with the return policy and everything else, just in case I didn't get the right shade, I went ahead and I purchased from Beautylish. Now I have watched a few reviews just because since I was going to be shade matching online, I wanted to see the people who received the product in PR and swatches online and things like that, just to try to get my best shade. And to be honest, I don't think I have quite the right shade for me, although I can make it work. This is the outer carton of the concealer. It is quite a large box, as you can see. It is labeled vegan and cruelty free, as all of Jeffree Star's products are, and it is also without parabens, fragrance, or talc. Now in this liquid concealer, you do receive 3.4 milliliters of product for $22, which has received a little bit of concern among some reviewers. Here's what the actual concealer looks like. I know that you've probably seen this already. It's quite heavy, and looking at it in person, it's actually really nice packaging. I thought I was gonna find it a little bit kitschy, but it's actually really, really cute. I think it's really nice. The star up top could be a little bit of a weapon, but you know, it's a really nice packaging. I like the custom packaging of it. Even the glass or the plastic component is really nicely finished. It's like acrylic where you can see right through it. It's really nice. Here's a close look at the applicators. You can see it is a bent doe foot applicator with an opening in the center that retains a lot of the product. And you'll see in the demo that I was able to do both eyes with just a single dip of the wand. As I mentioned, this concealer is 3.4 milliliters of product, so I grabbed 3 concealers just for comparison. The new Armani Power Fabric Concealer has 6 milliliters. The Urban Decay Naked Skin Concealer, which is my personal favorite, has 5 milliliters. And the Tarte Shape Tape has 10 milliliters of product. So when comparing it to a few other high-end concealers, you are receiving a little bit less product in this particular concealer, but it is a high coverage concealer. I actually have one more. In terms of the coverage, you'll hear me compare it to the Urban Decay All Nighter, and this one has 3.5 milliliters of product, and this is supposed to be a very full coverage concealer. So in that sense, it's comparable in finish as well as coverage and price. I mentioned I picked up the powder as well, and this is what the little box looks like. It's called the Magic Star Setting Powder. I picked mine up in the shade Beige. In terms of the ingredient, I don't see anything that would be any cause for alarm. However, this product does contain talc, and I know sometimes people want to avoid talc in their complexion products. You do receive 10 grams of product, and this is also $22. So I picked up a few powders from my collection for comparison. This one from Thrive Cosmetics that I recently tried out is 14 grams. The Charlotte Tilbury Magic powder is 13 grams. And the Huda Beauty is 20 grams of product. So the Magic Star powder in this case is less product, but it's also less pricey because those powders, let me check the price of the Huda Beauty powder. So the Huda Beauty powder is $34, and therefore it is more expensive, but you are getting a lot more products. So just something to keep in mind. In general, I think that the setting powder is reasonably priced for what you're getting. Here's the packaging up close. It does have a screw top with the Jeffree Star logo on the front, and when you open it up, it does have a sifter that you can twist to sprinkle out some of your powder. This smells delicious. It smells like you're standing right next to a cotton candy machine, so if you enjoy that fragrance, applying this will be quite aromatherapeutic. Interestingly enough, I don't see fragrance listed in the ingredients list. I would have expected to have fragrance listed, but in any case, it smells divine, and it's not a smell that lingers, and it's not too overpowering or sickeningly sweet in any way. It's very delicious. I'm gonna go ahead and insert clips of me applying the products so that you can see exactly how the products apply and how I choose to apply them. I wanted to shoot a close-up of my eyes without any concealer applied. I applied my foundation. I did apply a little bit of eye cream in the morning, but I didn't bring the foundation up to the under eye area. So as you can see, I have a lot of under eye creasing, and I have darkness on the inner corner of my eye that kind of goes upward into the tear duct area, and that's the same on both sides. Now ordinarily I use some sort of color corrector or brightener product like the Tatcha Pro, which is my favorite of the moment, but because I want you to see the effects of the concealer on its own, I didn't want to apply any of those products today. So again, I just have some eye cream from my skincare this morning and my base makeup and a little bit of cream contour. So let's go ahead and apply the product. Here's the tube. I picked mine up in the shade C13, and it was really difficult to pick a shade online. Depending on who created the swatches and the conditions of the lighting, all the shades started looking really different, even though a lot of people are making a really good effort of sending swatches. I know Trend Mood did so in natural lighting. Beautylish created their own swatches, and a lot of people who received the concealers in PR, but even so, I still don't think I have my ideal shade. But just the same, we're gonna go ahead and apply it. This is a lot lighter than I would ordinarily have my concealer, but I'm going to make it work. So I'm pulling it up into this area, into the inner corner, and this was one dip of the wand. So as you can see, the concealer is incredibly light, but I'm going to make the best of it. I'm going to blend out one side for you using a sponge. This is my Thrive Cosmetics sponge. I like the sponge because it comes to a point. And it really allows me to get into that inner corner. I'm going to use the back of my Stila brush just to get inside the inner tear duct area. My eyes are very deep set, and it's very difficult for me to get just inside the tear duct. So there you have one side applied with the sponge. It is a very full coverage concealer, and even though it is said to have a matte finish, since I haven't set it yet, I do feel that it still has a little bit of move to it, a little bit of, not a luminosity, but it doesn't look overly dry. So let's go ahead and blend out this side with my Stila brush. Also, one thing that I noticed, because I've played with it a little bit before making this video, is that it doesn't immediately dry. So the only other really full coverage concealer that I own is the one by Urban Decay, the All Nighter, and I actually like it. I did a review of that on my channel. But what I find with that concealer is that it dries almost immediately, so you have to work one side at a time. And as you can notice, when I was working with this one, it does give you a little bit of wiggle room to blend it out. So you can paint it in the areas where you want the coverage and then blend it out with no real hurry. Now with the brush, it's not soaking up the product. That's one of the things I really love about this brush. I featured it in my favorites brushes video, and it's not soaking up a lot of the product, so I'm able to move the concealer around a lot more. So I'm getting some of it onto my eyelid just as I'm blending it out. And again, I'm trying to avoid the harsh contrast between my foundation and the concealer. So here's the initial application of concealer. I'm not going to apply any more because I do prefer my foundation to be a little bit more sheer coverage, and obviously a very heavy perfected under eye doesn't blend really well with that. And so this is how we're looking at this point. In terms of preference for blending tool, I have to say I really like them both, although I do have to rely very heavily on the brush so that I can get that inner corner. The Thrive Cosmetics sponge is the best one that I have found to get into the inner corner, but even so, I find I can get a better application on the inner corner if I do go ahead and use a brush. overall I do think I have a brightening effect, and I like the degree of coverage of the concealer. Now, since this is a matte concealer, I've used it without setting it, and I've liked it very well. I still do get a small amount of creasing because that's natural for me, plus I put a lot of glowy spray on my skin, and that gets my face products to move around just a little bit. So I have noticed creasing under those conditions, but I do want to share the setting powder with you as well today, so I'm gonna go ahead and set my concealer as well. So here's the packaging of the setting powder. I elected to pick mine up in the shade beige. I have a lot of translucent powders already, and I wanted to take advantage of this powder coming in different shades. I thought beige would be the best suitable for my skin tone. If you can see this, the container does have a sifter which you can shift open or close by turning. So if I turn it this way, then the sifter is closed, and I put a little bit of the powder into my lid. So I'm just going to give my under eye a final blend just to make sure that all those creases are out, and then I'm going to take my Huda Beauty brush and I'm going to press the powder underneath my eye. So the powder is light in terms of the shade, but I think that it is a good shade for my particular under eye. As you can see, it's really mattifying and blurring. If you compare one side to the other, you can see a lot more of my imperfections. The little milia spots that I have underneath my eyes are much more visible on the eye that has not been set. So again, I blended out all the little lines, and I'm going to go ahead and set right underneath, and I'm bringing it up to the sides of my nose. The powder does smell like cotton candy, which it makes it really pleasant to use if you enjoy that fragrance. Now I'm just going to dust away the excess. And here you can see my under eyes. If I turn my head, you can see that the darkness that usually shows on the inner corner is very visibly reduced, and my under eyes, by virtue of being so mattified, have been blurred as well. Now, I didn't do a full-on bake. I just stamped on quite a bit of the product, and then I brushed off the excess with this end of the brush. Now, with other concealers, ones that are a little bit more radiant, more hydrating, if I set my under eyes that way, they absorb the powder so much, and then it creates those creases under my eyes again. So this kind of technique works a lot better with a matte concealer for me. And even though I mentioned that I have used it without setting it and it works fine, I can also use it in this technique because it just doesn't cake up with the powder. So I'm gonna go on and finish the rest of my makeup. I wanna do a palette bingo today. I'm excited about that, with a palette that was gifted to me. So I'm gonna be filming for quite some time, and I will probably do a check-in later on in the day so that you can see how the concealer has held up, but I will have a full face of makeup. And right now I have to say I'm really liking the way that my under eyes look, but again, this is not a first impression, and I have had time to play around with the concealer a little bit so that I can give you my honest opinion regarding with how the products perform in the longer term. It's been a few hours now since I applied my concealer and my full face of makeup actually. I just had a few chores to do around the house and other things before I came back to give you my thoughts on the concealer itself. So I want you to be able to look really up close to see how my concealer has been settling. I think that it's been settling really well. I haven't had to fiddle with it in any sort of way. I did brush off a little bit of fallout that I had when I was creating my eye look. I did so with the same powder brush that I used to set the concealer in the first place, just to brush away a little bit of that fallout. It brushed away fine since I semi-baked underneath my eyes and it was very dry under that area, so I didn't have any trouble in that regard. I have to say I'm really happy with the concealer as a whole. I think that it looks really nice. Even looking at it up close, I wanted you to really be able to tell. Now I think it does look a little bit dry right underneath where my eye wrinkles are, and this is typical no matter what concealer I'm wearing. And actually I have to say that this concealer looks good with the powder on, to the same extent that a regular concealer that I typically use would look without setting. And my concealer lately has looked better without setting it. So I'm actually really impressed both with the concealer and the powder. I use just the lightest layer of the powder using my Makeup Forever 122 brush. I just went in and I just put the lightest layer to set over my foundation that I was wearing today, because I was going to go over it with a few more powder products and I didn't want them to stick down. And it just created a very nice layer. My skin does not look dry, and neither did it lose a lot of that luminosity that I had originally intended my foundation to have based on my choice of base and foundation as a whole. So overall, I have to say that this was really a hit for me. I'm gonna have you get really close so you can take a better look. I don't know how much more I'll be able to do with the camera, but let's try. You can see that the inner corner where I usually have darkness, it looks fine. It looks bright under there. And just in general, the whole concealer area looks pretty good. Here you can see the little milia dots that I have. But since the setting powder is matte, it doesn't bring attention to it. I keep the more luminous areas of my base away from there. And I mean, I think it looks good. Let me know what you think in the comments down below, if you picked it up, how you're feeling about it. I've seen a few reviews here and there. I was really looking online trying to pick out my shade, and so I did watch a few reviews, and I've seen it get mixed reviews actually, but for me, this one's gonna be a hit. Now, let's regain our personal space. Hopefully you enjoyed seeing how the products apply. I really like them, you guys. I think that they're really nice. Now, I have to say that there is absolutely no way this is going to be my everyday concealer. I commented that my everyday wear is very light makeup application, very light foundation, usually a BB cream or tinted moisturizer kind of product. So this is going to be something that I would use on my full glam days. I really do like the coverage. It's really great, and I applied it without any additional color correctors or anything like that, just to see how the product would perform on its own. I also noted that in the couple of days that I wore it before that I didn't set it, it wears really well even if you don't like setting your concealer. Now, it is a full coverage formula, but it isn't one of those like the Urban Decay All Nighter Concealer where once you apply that, you have to start blending right away because it dries really quickly. This gives you a little wiggle room so you can apply it and then blend out. It really gives you a little time to work with it. So that's another plus in terms of the concealer. But for me personally, it's not going to be an everyday concealer. I wouldn't use this for spot concealing either, just because my shade is not quite right. I'm definitely going to keep this one because I feel I can make it work, and I do like a brighter under eye since I do suffer from dark circles. And since I got the setting powder in the shade beige, this actually matches my skin tone really well, and it allows the concealer to look a little bit more natural. I'm impressed with how much I like the setting powder. I think I actually like the setting powder more than the concealer just because it's so finely milled. I like the color of it, and I just like that you need a very light layer to set your foundation, to set your concealer, and it doesn't look dry, even though I believe that this is supposed to be a mattifying product. Well, it doesn't actually say mattifying, but I felt that it was mattifying. When I applied it, I could see the blurring. When you look side by side, you can see the one that is mattified versus the one that was just the concealer on its own. I really like this powder. I don't fully 100% rely on powders, but I think that this is one that I'll continue to use. At this point, I really like the Huda powder. I really like the Jeffree Star powder. The Thrive Cosmetics powder I really enjoyed, which I showed a minute ago. And I really like the Wowder. Those, I think, are my 4 preferred powders of the moment. So if you have been curious, then hopefully my sharing my thoughts has helped you make a decision on whether or not you want to pick up the different items. I would say that the beige shade looks really great on a light medium to medium skin tone, which is what I am. If you're similar to my shade, which I know some of you are, the shade C13 is a little bit light. I would go a couple of shades lighter, darker. Now this one is a neutral undertone, which is what I prefer. I think this one was neutral or warm. Okay, yeah, C13 was designated medium with neutral undertones. So if you're my shade, I would advise that you stick with the neutral undertones, but maybe go a shade or two higher if you prefer a less bright under eye. that's everything that I wanted to share regarding the concealer and setting powder. I think they're a very good buy. I like the products. Very excited to have them in my collection, and I'm giving them a positive review. That's everything for my video. If you have some questions that I didn't cover, then leave those for me in the comment section down below. I'm happy to try to answer them as best as I can. And if you purchase the products, I would love to know your experience using them. I am a dry skin type, and so I only can speak for how they're working on my particular skin type. If you have oily skin, I would love to know how it's working out for you as well. Thank you so much for joining me for another video. I hope you enjoyed it, and if you did, don't forget to give it a like for me and subscribe to my channel if you haven't already, as I would love to have you join me for a future video, which should be really, really soon. I hope you're having a lovely day. I'll see you on my next one. Bye-bye.